It's been done throughout history. The good news is that right in my hometown of Austin, Texas, we just threw out the Patriot Act. It's over 400 cities. It's over 400 cities. It's not 170. It's not 250. It's over 400 cities and towns. That's being censored. It's now 3 states with about 3 or 4 others about to repudiate it. We have a Bill of Rights culture, a liberty culture growing, and across the board. In radio interviews I do and on my own syndicated show, liberals, conservatives, black, white, old, young, they know it's tyranny. They know George Bush wants to be a dictator, and people are waking up everywhere. So be part of history. Everybody out there watching, be part of history. Educate yourselves on the facts. Research the truth. And then get out there and speak out to everyone in your community about history. That powerful men and powerful people want more control. And it's happening again. And it can happen in America. If we don't do this, we're delivering our children and our culture and our society into the pit of a New World Order global system of complete tyranny. And if America falls, the rest of the world will be swallowed by this neo-fascism that will make Brave New World in 1984 look like a cakewalk. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for standing up against tyranny. Infowars.com.
My name is Frank Morales. I'm from Lower East Side, New York. I'm a squatter since 1985, an Episcopal priest. I wrote a piece for Global Outlook magazine entitled Pentagon Declares War on America, which dealt with, I meant that literally, which deals with under the operations other than war doctrine and the consolidation of the military and the police within America with the imminent repeal of the Posse Comitatus Act. Just this past week there was more talk of that, which will completely eliminate any distinction between the police and the military in America, the institutionalization of NORTHCOM, a domestic military command which is celebrating its 1-year anniversary this past week. We're looking at what Alex was referring to, which is the literal realization of a military police state in America. The war on terrorism, particularly in its homeland defense manifestation, is a thin cover for the war on dissent. Homeland defense, I wrote a piece for Covert Action in '99 because the euphemism of homeland defense was being tossed around at the Pentagon at that time. At that time, homeland defense was very clearly about civil disturbance suppression, growing out of an extension of the Garden Plot operation. We can't get bogged down and get paranoid about these things, but we have to take action. In New York City right now, we're forming a group which is about demilitarizing the police in preparation for the RNC convention in August. Now, what we mean by that is to examine the ways in which the police acquire so-called non-lethal weapons through the public contracts, a recodification of Posse Comitatus locally, and various other means that we can preempt their ability to preempt us. So we need to get involved in some concrete action so we can push these things back. Okay, all power to the imagination. Thank you.
Yes. We're talking to a grassroots activist, Frank Morales, who has an incredible grasp on this infrastructure, this web of control that's been put in place by the military-industrial complex. Part of their plan to use crises, whether it's the drug war or the war on terror, to convince the general public to accept giving up liberty for security. Mr. Morales, thanks for talking to us.
Okay.
Time and time again, we see these pretexts for control. There's a crisis, we've got to take your freedoms, we can keep you safe. But when you investigate it, when I've investigated it, it always leads back to these private corporations that sit as parasitic organisms above the mechanisms of government. Solutions, Frank Morales, in your years of study, to countering that. How do you counter that politically? And number one, how do you break the conditioning of the general public out there that's in kind of a mesmerized state?
Well, one of the things that I think we need to rely on is, the fact that there's a long tradition in America separating the military from the police. George Washington, for instance, refused kingship, was offered this title, but refused to take on that role, suggesting that, it was not right for a movement in those days that was about opposing the state, the quartering of soldiers in people's houses and so forth. It was an anti-militarism that sort of founded this country, and the separation between the military and the police is kind of the foundation upon which our democracy is built. So I think one of the things that people need to look at is the ways in which that we can recodify the Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act being the criminal statute which bars the military from enforcing laws domestically. One of the things that we're trying to do in New York City right now, along with the Bill of Rights defense committees which are popping up around the country right now, is to recodify Posse Comitatus locally, so that we can begin to break the connection between the militarization of the police and the kind of transfers of technology, non-lethal weapons, and so forth that's coming into local police forces. Right now, we're looking at 1,000 or more SWAT units around the country. We're looking at drug pretexts for Waco. Waco was ostensibly a drug operation, which allowed for the involvement of Delta Force and other military forces. So there's a connection between this war on drugs and any number of situations in which the civil liberties and the rights of American citizenry are being threatened and undermined right now.
We go out in the communities around Austin, and these are old communities in the 1830s, 1840s,
yeah.
Happy little communities. And they go, us and all our neighbors have been raided by the Army.
Yeah.
And they'll have the Army with them with helicopters in support, with men cussing and yelling and screaming at children, and nothing's found. And they get mad.
Right.
It's like they're raiding a Viet Cong village or something.
Exactly. At the recent few years back, I'm sure you're familiar there with the urban warrior war game scenarios that the Pentagon was carrying out around the country.
Oakland and everywhere.
Yeah, they were doing them all over the place. And in some cities, they were thrown out. There was a town in Texas, I don't remember, Kingsville, I think it was, where they had a 3-day...
We were there. Buildings on fire.
Right,
they had foreign troops with them.
Yeah, and then I think it was the mayor of Charlottesville, I guess that's in North Carolina, South Carolina, actually, protested the involvement, of the military in this training exercise and had them thrown out of town. So in that case, the
Chief of Police in San Antonio too.
Yeah. So I mean, but these exercises are thinly disguised, civil disturbance suppression exercises.
Conditioning mechanisms.
Yeah, they're getting people used to the involvement of the military. When you have Bush, literally this week as we're speaking, we're in the first week of October 2003, getting ready to repeal Posse Comitatus Act. Thereby, eliminating any distinction between the military and the police. I mean, they're not talking about getting us used to it. They're talking about a complete consolidation of the military and the police, so that military people will be able to search your home, will be able to arrest you legally under the weakest of pretenses. In the case of New York, oh, sorry, we broke in. The woman died of a heart attack, Mrs. Spruill.
Well, that's a horrible case, but I see cases scanning newswires every week where it's the wrong house and they shoot some old guy or some young boy in the back and say, well, collateral damage, it's the war on drugs.
Exactly.
And then you catch the CIA shipping the trash in to begin with, and they bust some cartel that didn't pay them their cut.
Exactly.
It seems to me one of the things holding back this fascist system from coming into full fruition is that they don't have enough sociopaths. They don't have enough gung-ho people that will carry out the type of mass oppression that they've put down in their blueprints and their plans. Comments?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is after the Second World War, there were studies done on the firing rates of the soldiers, which showed that most soldiers would not shoot at another human being, even if they were directly threatened, that they had a predisposition not to kill. So to make a long story short, by the time of Vietnam, the manner in which soldiers were trained has shifted to a form of operant conditioning. So marksmanship is no longer little ducks on a pond, on a modified pond that you knock over and whatever on a fence. It's video simulation, video rooms that you walk into, and they develop a quick shoot reflex. In New York City right now, the NYPD has a contract, and so does the LAPD, with Firearms Training Systems Incorporated, based in Sewanee, Georgia. Firearms Training Systems Incorporated not only trains the LAPD in marksmanship and the NYPD using operant condition, so on, but also trains the Marines, also trains militaries around the world. Firearms Training Systems, until recently, was headed up by Peter Marino, who comes out of the Central Intelligence Agency